At the high-end Brisco Gala, Eun-kyung is a lowly cleaner being bullied by the man who stole her husband's business. Her young son watches in tears as the villain pours champagne over her head to shame her in front of the rich crowd. Instead of crying or running away, Eun-kyung stands up for herself and says she would rather be with a beggar than a cruel king. She turns to a ragged man in the shadows, her husband Hwan in disguise, and asks him to take her home. But choosing the beggar over the rich bully, she proves her loyalty and changes her fate. Eun-kyung lives in a tiny, poor apartment, struggling to buy milk for her son while refusing to sell her missing husband's old belongings. She is a noble mother living in a world of greed, making her the true queen of the streets. At the same time, Hwan hides in the shadows, pretending to be a useless beggar. While he acts weak, he secretly uses a hidden phone to hunt for the traitors who tried to kill him 5 years ago. The audience sees a truth that the characters do not. The beggar is actually the most powerful mafia boss in the city. Every time a bully insults him, they are unknowingly inviting their own destruction, creating a ticking clock that leads to a massive, explosive reveal. The pouring rain falls in heavy sheets as Eun-kyung leads a ragged, dirty stranger through the dark and twisting alleys of the slums. The man, Hwan, plays his part perfectly, stumbling over trash and keeping his head bowed low to hide his sharp, piercing eyes. Eun-kyung, whose hands are rough and calloused from years of scrubbing floors for the rich, gently reaches back to steady his arm whenever he trips. She brings him into her tiny, cramped basement apartment, promising him that even though the room is small, it is a safe place to hide from the storm. She has no idea that the clumsy man she is helping is actually the legendary Dragon of Seoul, the most powerful mafia boss the city has ever known. Inside the dim room, Eun-kyung's young son, Yeon-woo, looks up from his only toy with wide, hopeful eyes and asks if this dirty stranger is his new father. The question hangs in the air, painful and heavy, as Eun-kyung remembers the rich villains who cheated her out of her old life. Hwan remains completely silent, sitting awkwardly on a small wooden stool that looks like it might break under his large frame. As Eun-kyung turns to the stove to prepare a humble meal, Hwan's beggar act slips for just a second. His movement suddenly becomes smooth and deadly, showing the hidden grace of a king who is used to commanding armies. As Hwan leans over to pick up a fallen spoon, his torn wet shirt slides down his broad shoulder. The little boy gasps in total wonder because stretching across the man's back is a massive tattoo of a dragon inked in deep midnight black. The scales seem to shimmer in the flickering light, looking like a real beast hidden under the rags. Hwan freezes and quickly pulls his shirt back up, returning to his role of a trembling mute beggar before Eun-kyung can see. As she hands him a warm bowl of porridge with a kind, tired smile, Hwan realizes his plan has changed. He came here to see if everyone in the world was greedy and cruel, but instead he found a woman who would share her very last meal with a ghost. The next morning, the sharp, stinging smell of bleach fills the grand lobby of the Brisco Group building as Eun-kyung scrubs the cold marble floors. Her back aches with every move and her heart is heavy, still thinking about the mysterious, silent man she left resting in her kitchen. She is so focused on her work that she has no idea a ragged shadow has followed her all the way to the office. Hwan is hidden in the morning fog, watching her through the glass doors like a guardian ghost, his eyes never leaving her for a single second. He sees the way the rich employees walk past her as if she is invisible, unaware that the woman cleaning their floors is the true owner of the building. Suddenly, the silence is shattered by the heavy thud of boots. Scar, a cruel debt collector with a heart of stone, marches across the wet floor with 2 thugs, leaving ugly trails of mud on Eun-kyung's hard work. He mocks her for being on her knees and tells her that her debts have doubled overnight. When he threatens to snatch her son Yeon-woo from his school, Eun-kyung's face turns pale with a mother's terror. She begs them to stay away from her child, but Scar only laughs and raises a massive, heavy hand to strike her. Just as the blow is about to land, a clumsy beggar carrying a huge stack of old cardboard boxes trips over his own feet and crashes directly into the group of men. To the people watching, it looks like a pathetic, messy accident, but it is actually a hidden dance of death. As Hwan stumbles forward, his movements are fast and lethal. Hidden by the falling boxes, his elbow strikes Scar's chest like a hammer, and his heavy boot crushes another man's foot with perfect timing. In only 3 seconds, all 3 thugs collapse onto the soapy floor, gasping for air and unable to move. Hwan falls down right along with them, acting dazed and frightened so that no one suspects he is a master fighter. He pretends to be a helpless fool, hiding his deadly skills behind a mask of dirt and rags. Eun-kyung immediately drops her mop and rushes to Hwan's side, worried that the poor man has been badly hurt in the scuffle. She shields him from the approaching security guards, insisting to everyone that he just had an unfortunate accident and didn't mean any harm. She cannot see the cold, calculating fire in Hwan's eyes as he secretly checks the room for cameras and exits. Suddenly, Hwan reaches out and grabs her arm, speaking his first word in a deep, vibrating command: "Go home." Eun-kyung freezes, her heart racing, because for one brief moment, she doesn't see a beggar at all. She sees a man with the power and authority of a king who once owned the sky. Late that night, while the city is wrapped in a cold silence, Hwan sits in the shadows of the basement, his body no longer slumped in fake weakness. He reaches into a secret hollowed-out compartment in his boot and pulls out a slim, glowing device, a piece of technology so powerful and expensive it could buy the entire slum block. His fingers, once shaking as a beggar, now move with the deadly rhythmic precision of a grand master. With a few sharp commands, he shatters through layers of digital firewalls and high-security locks, reaching into a hidden bank account that has been sleeping for 5 years. By 3 in the morning, the dragon has reclaimed his lost treasure, secretly buying enough shares to become the absolute owner of the Brisco Group, the very company that humiliated his wife. The next morning, the air in the supply closet is thick with the smell of cheap soap, as Eun-kyung prepares for another day of back-breaking labor. Her hands are raw and stinging from harsh chemicals, and her heart is heavy with the fear that the debt collectors will return to hurt her son. Suddenly, the door is kicked open, but it isn't a thug standing there. It is the branch manager, a man who usually treats her like a piece of invisible trash. Today, he is drenched in a cold sweat, his face a ghostly shade of white, and his hands are trembling so violently he can barely speak. He looks at her not as a cleaner, but as if she is a terrifying goddess who holds his entire life in her hands. The manager frantically begs her to drop her mop and take off her stained uniform, acting as if the rags she is wearing are suddenly made of the finest silk. Eun-kyung stands frozen in shock, her eyes wide with confusion, certain that this must be some kind of cruel joke or a terrible mistake. But the manager stammers that a high-priority order has just come down from the mysterious new president of the company. The order states that the president has personally reviewed her old university records and discovered that she was a brilliant marketing star before her life fell apart. Because of this, she has been appointed as the lead consultant for the New City project, a multi-million-dollar deal that is the crown jewel of the entire industry. Eun-kyung's heart hammers against her ribs like a trapped bird as she tries to tell the manager that she is just a lowly cleaner who doesn't belong in a boardroom. The manager nearly falls to his knees, crying out that there are no mistakes at Brisco and that she now has total authority over the project. He reveals that the usurper, Mr. Wo-shin, and all the bullies who tried to shackle her with debt have been banned from the floor and stripped of their power. As he leads her toward the glass executive elevators, the rich office workers who used to spit on her shoes now stand back in total stunned silence, watching the cleaner queen rise from the dust to take her throne. As the elevator doors begin to close, she catches a final glimpse of Hwan sitting near the service entrance. He is wrapped in a tattered, filthy blanket, looking like a pathetic and broken beggar to the rest of the world. But as their eyes lock through the swirling crowd, the beggar gives her a tiny, microscopic nod of approval. In that split second, the mask slips, and Eun-kyung sees a flash of the legendary king who once owned the sky. She realizes with a jolt of electricity that her sudden rise to power isn't luck. It is a gift from the ghost she brought home, a man who is secretly burning the world down just to keep her safe. The golden afternoon sun pours through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of a private VIP suite, but the warmth does not reach Eun-kyung's heart. Across the polished mahogany table sits Mr. Woo Shin, the man who betrayed her husband and built a throne out of lies. He looks every bit the powerful mogul in his razor-sharp suit, but to Eun-kyung, he is a predator who smells of greed and treachery. With a smug, confident smile, he slides a check across the table for $5 million, a staggering amount of money that could buy 1,000 lives like the one she has now. Mr. Woo Shin sneers that a woman of her new high standing shouldn't be anchored to a stray dog like the beggar she brought home, and he demands she throw him away to save her dignity. Hidden behind a heavy, dark velvet curtain in the corner of the room, Hwan stands as still as a stone statue, his breath shallow and his body tense. His eyes are narrowed into lethal slits as he listens to the man who stole his life try to buy his wife's soul. This is the moment Hwan has both feared and craved. He has given her the platform and the power, and now he is providing her with the perfect exit strategy. One word from her, and she could walk away from the damp basement, the smell of bleach, and the man in filthy rags forever. He waits in the shadows, his pulse slow, heavy thrum in his ears, wondering if his queen will finally betray the ghost for a mountain of gold. Mr. Woo Shin leans forward, his predatory smile widening as he pushes a set of divorce papers toward her, like a trap. He promises her a glittering penthouse, a world-class education for her son, Yen-woo, and a life where she never has to lift a finger again. All she has to do is sign her name and promise never to look at that piece of filth in her basement ever again. Eun-kyung stares at the check, her fingers trembling as the memories of her suffering flash through her mind. She remembers the cold, the hunger, and the way the world spat on her when she was down. The silence in the room is suffocating as both men, the one in the light and the one in the dark, wait to see if her love has a price tag. Slowly, Eun-kyung reaches out her hand, and for a heartbeat it looks like she might reach for the pen. But instead, she snatches the $5 million check and tears it in half with a sudden, violent snap. She continues to rip the paper into smaller and smaller pieces until the white scraps fall onto the expensive table like bitter flakes of snow. She looks Mr. Woo Shin directly in his eyes with a cold, magnificent fury that makes the powerful man flinch in his seat. She tells him that while he calls her husband a piece of filth, that beggar was the only person who stood by her and protected her when she was covered in the dirt of the streets. She declares that she would rather share a single crust of bread with that man than sit at a royal banquet with a hollow snake like Mr. Woo Shin. In the darkness behind the curtain, Hwan closes his eyes as a single hot tear of pride and relief traces a path through the grime on his cheek. The test is finally over, and the answer is written in the scraps of paper on the floor. His wife's loyalty is more powerful than any fortune in the world. As Eun-kyung stands up and walks out of the suite like a vengeful angel, her head held high, Hwan feels a terrifying and ancient power rising within his chest. He is no longer just a man seeking revenge for his lost empire. He is a dragon who has found his true queen. For the first time in 5 years, he doesn't just want to destroy his enemies. He wants to build a new world and lay it at the feet of the woman who chose him when he was nothing. The following evening, a sleek, pitch-black limousine pulls up at the entrance of the dirty, crumbling slums. It looks like an alien spaceship parked among the rusted trash bins and broken bricks. Eun-kyung steps out, wearing a beautiful gown she thinks she won in a lucky giveaway, but she feels like a fraud in such a fancy car. She has been summoned to a private dinner with the mysterious shadow president of the Brisco Group. She is nervous and curious, wanting to thank the powerful man who plucked her from the floors and gave her a seat at the head of the city's largest project. The penthouse restaurant is a breathtaking cathedral of glass and moonlight, floating high above the city's glowing lights and looking down on the world she once scrubbed for. At the head of a long candlelit table sat a man whose face is completely obscured by a mask of polished reflective silver and the deep, heavy shadows of his high-backed chair. To keep his identity a total secret, Hwan uses a voice modulator that turns his tone into a low, synthetic rumble that vibrates through the room. Behind that mask, Hwan's eyes trace her silhouette with a longing that hurts, but he remains in character, telling her that a woman of her rare brilliance should never have to return to a damp basement every night to be with a mute beggar who only brings shame to her new, powerful name. Eun-kyung sets her crystal wine glass down with a sharp, echoing click, her initial awe for the president instantly replaced by a fierce and protective heat that radiates from her soul. She doesn't hesitate for a single second to defend the man the world mocks. She tells the masked president that while he might see only rags and filth, he has never had the privilege of seeing her husband's true soul. Her voice, once a whisper of a frightened servant, now fills the vast room with a steady and unshakable power. She explains that while the world sees Hwan as unfortunate or broken, he was the only human being who stood in the path of the stones when people were trying to crush her, proving that he is a shield that gold could never buy. Hwan sits behind the silver mask, his knuckles turning white as he grips the arms of his chair, his heart racing with a violence and passion he hasn't felt in all his years of warfare. He is testing her loyalty to its absolute breaking point, pushing her to see if she will trade her beggar husband for a life of ultimate luxury and royal status. But every word she speaks is a healing balm on his scarred spirit, as she tells him that she has no need for his fancy dinner or his cold luxury if it means looking down on the man who shared his last crust of bread with her. She tells the most powerful man in the city that she loves Hwan precisely because he has nothing, yet manages to give her every single piece of himself, making him the only true home she has ever known. Eun-kyung stands up from the table, leaving the gourmet banquet untouched as a final act of defiance, her eyes glistening with tears of pride. She looks toward the shadows where the president sits and declares that she is a loyal wife above all else, and if her husband is considered an embarrassment to his company, then she is an embarrassment as well and will happily go back to the mud with him. As she turns and walks away, her heels clicking defiantly against the expensive marble floor, Hwan watches her through the silver mask with a soul that is finally soaring. He had spent 5 long years believing that love was just a transaction or a lie, but tonight, a woman who once cleaned floors has taught a Mafia King that he is finally the richest man in the world because of her heart. The following morning, the memory of her dinner with the shadow president hangs over Eun-kyung like a strange, beautiful dream. She stands in her small kitchen, watching Hwan as he sits on the dusty floor, his head bowed as he carefully repairs a broken toy for their son. His hands are covered in grime, yet they move with a haunting, graceful familiarity that she can no longer ignore. Driven by a sudden need to be useful, she picks up his heavy, tattered coat to give it a long overdue cleaning, unaware that the fabric is hiding a secret that will change her life in an instant. As she shakes out the worn fabric, a small laminated object slips from a hidden inner seam and flutters quietly to the floor. Eun-kyung kneels to pick it up, and suddenly the world seems to go silent. It is a photograph, creased and stained by years of travel, but the faces are unmistakable. It is their wedding day. There stands Hwan, tall and radiant in a sharp tuxedo, his arm wrapped protectively around a younger, glowing Eun-kyung. This isn't a picture a random beggar would find in the trash. It is a personal treasure, a piece of a heart kept close for 5 long years. Her breath catches in her throat as a sharp, painful realization blooms in her chest. She looks from the powerful man in the photo, the legendary Dragon of Seoul, to the ragged man currently humming a soft tune to their son. The broad shoulders, the way he tilts his head, the silent strength, it is all there. This man isn't just a stranger she rescued, he is the husband she has been mourning. "Hwan?" she whispers, her voice trembling with 5 years of unshed tears. Hwan's shoulders lock instantly, and the beggar persona begins to melt away as he realizes the secret is out. Before the truth can fully break the surface, the thin basement door is kicked inward with a deafening crack that echoes through the tiny room. 3 professional killers in black tactical gear storm inside, their silenced weapons raised and ready. These are not the local bullies she has faced before. These are deadly assassins from the rival syndicate who have been hunting the dragon since the day he disappeared. One of them levels a gun at Eun-kyung's head, and a terrifying red laser dot begins to dance across her chest, turning the room into a scene of pure horror. Hwan stands up slowly, and in an instant the clumsy beggar vanishes completely. His eyes turn into a cold, terrifying void that promises nothing but death to his enemies. However, as he looks at his terrified son and his wife holding their wedding photo like a shield, he realizes he cannot fight back here without risking their lives. "Take me," Hwan rasps, his voice no longer broken or weak, but deep and commanding like a king. He offers his own life as a trade, demanding they leave the woman and child untouched, finally revealing his true power to protect his family. The assassins grab Hwan, shoving him toward the door with brutal force. Eun-kyung lunges forward, screaming his name as the wedding photo slips from her fingers, but one of the men strikes her, sending her spinning to the floor. As they drag him out into the pouring rain and toward a waiting black van, Hwan looks back over his shoulder one last time. In his eyes, Eun-kyung finally sees the man she loved. The dragon is fully awake, and his gaze carries a silent promise of fire and blood for anyone who dared to touch her. The door slams shut, and the husband she just found is stolen from her once again. The black van screeches to a violent stop in a lonely, abandoned warehouse district. The air is thick with the smell of salt and old, rusted iron. Inside the dark van, Hwan is pinned to the floor with thick plastic ties on his wrists, but he doesn't care about the pain. His heart stops when he hears another car arrive and the heavy doors slide open with a loud bang. A second later, a terrified Eun-kyung is thrown into the dirt beside him, her face pale and her eyes wide with fear. Hwan's blood begins to boil with a cold, deep anger. His secret plan to protect her from the shadows has failed, and now they are both trapped in a deadly cage with no way out. Mr. Wu Xin, the man who stole Hwan's life and company, steps out of the shadows. His expensive shoes click loudly on the concrete floor like a ticking clock. He is no longer the calm businessman from the office. His face is sweaty and twisted with fear. He screams that he checked the security cameras and finally realized the truth. The clumsy beggar was actually a master of death. Mr. Wu Xin realizes that Hwan is not just a homeless man, but a dangerous ghost that refused to stay buried. He knows the legendary dragon has returned to take back his throne, and the pure terror in Mr. Wu Xin's eyes makes the air in the room feel thin and heavy. Eun-kyung gasps for breath, her mind spinning as she looks between the shaking man in the suit and the ragged man in ties. She is finally seeing the true face of her husband under the flickering warehouse lights. Mr. Wu Xin loses his mind and pulls out a shiny silver pistol, pointing it directly at Eun-kyung's forehead. He vows to kill them both right now and burn the city to the ground before he loses his power. In that terrifying second, as the gun is aimed at the woman he loves, the whole world seems to stand still. Hwan doesn't just move, he explodes with a power that seems impossible for a human being to have. With a loud, bone-breaking crack, Hwan snaps the heavy plastic ties on his wrists, using nothing but his raw strength. He lunges forward like a blur of shadow, moving so fast that no one can even see him. Before Mr. Wu Xin can pull the trigger, Hwan's heavy boot kicks the pistol, sending it flying high into the dark ceiling.
In one smooth, scary motion, Hwan turns and strikes the first guard, knocking him out instantly. The beggar is gone forever. In his place stands a whirlwind of destruction that the criminal world hasn't seen in 5 long years, and he is ready to tear everything apart. Hwan moves through the professional killers like a storm, his elbows and knees snapping bones and sending men flying through the air. This is the dragon style, the famous and scary way of fighting that once controlled every gang in the city. Mr. Wu Xin scrambles backward in a panic, tripping over boxes and gasping for air as he watches his best guards fall like dry grass in a fire. As Hwan finishes the last man, his tattered hoodie is ripped away, revealing the massive, beautiful dragon tattoo across his back. The ink seems to glow under the warehouse lights, looking like a real beast that has finally been set free. Eun-kyung watches in total awe as Hwan stands tall, his eyes looking like a king who has returned to claim his crown. He steps between her and Mr. Wu Xin, his voice a low, deep growl that makes the very floor shake. He tells Mr. Wu Xin that he made a huge mistake by not killing him 5 years ago, because now Hwan is coming to destroy everything Mr. Wu Xin has ever loved. He reaches down and pulls Eun-kyung to her feet, his touch suddenly becoming soft and gentle. The act is over. The beggar is dead, and the boss has finally come back to lead his queen out of the darkness and into their new empire.
The glass doors of the Brisco Group headquarters hiss open as a cold, rainy wind blows into the lobby. Hwan walks across the expensive white marble, leaving muddy and bloody footprints behind him. He is still wearing his dirty, torn beggar's clothes, and his face is bruised from the big fight at the warehouse. Even though he looks like a man with nothing, the air around him feels heavy and dangerous. Everyone who sees him feels a strange pressure, as if a king has walked into the room, even though he is still dressed in rags. Upstairs in the grand ballroom, the city's richest and most powerful people are gathered for a massive party. They are drinking champagne and laughing, the same people who mocked Eun-kyung while she scrubbed their floors. Mr. Wu Xin stands on the stage, raising his glass and cheering for a new era. He looks happy and proud, truly believing that he has finally killed the ghost of Hwan and that his power is now safe forever. He has no idea that the man he fears most is already inside the building. Suddenly, the heavy oak doors at the back of the hall are kicked open with a loud bang. The music stops instantly, and the room goes silent. The rich guests turn around and make disgusted faces when they see the beggar standing there. Mr. Wu Xin's face turns pale, and he screams for his security guards to throw the trash out of the building. He is terrified because he knows Hwan should be dead, and seeing him standing there feels like seeing a nightmare come to life in front of everyone. Hwan doesn't say a word as he walks down the center aisle, his eyes locked on Mr. Wu Xin. A dozen elite guards, the best fighters money can buy, rush forward to stop him, but Hwan doesn't even raise his fists. He looks at the lead guard, a man who had worked for Hwan's family for 20 years, and speaks one single powerful word: stand. The guard freezes in place, his eyes wide with shock as he recognizes the true boss. One by one, the guards drop their weapons and bow their heads in respect, refusing to touch the man they once served. The room becomes deathly quiet as Hwan walks onto the stage and stands right in front of a shaking, terrified Mr. Wu Xin. With a slow movement, Hwan pulls a gold-stamped card from his pocket, the master key to the entire company and the secret seal of the dragon. He drops it on the podium with a loud clank. "I believe you're in my chair, Mr. Wu Xin," Hwan says, his voice sounding like a clap of thunder. The rich guests gasp in horror, and the woman who once stepped on Eun-kyung's hand falls to her knees, realizing she has mocked the man who now owns everything she has. Eun-kyung stands at the edge of the crowd, her heart beating fast as she watches the man she loves take back his world. Hwan pulls off his tattered hoodie, letting the rags fall to the floor to show the massive, majestic dragon tattoo on his back. It is the mark of a king who has returned from the grave to claim his throne. The rich people are shaking with fear, and the world is in shock, but Hwan only looks at Eun-kyung. The long, hard test is over. The dragon has returned, and his reign of fire is just beginning. The silence in the grand ballroom is heavy and thick, like the air before a huge storm. Hwan stands on the stage, looking like a powerful but scarred king, staring down at the men who once thought they were untouchable. These rich men used to laugh at the poor, but now they are shaking with fear. Hwan doesn't need a weapon to destroy them. He simply uses the truth. He stands tall, no longer a beggar, but a man who has come to collect every debt that is owed to his family. With a small signal from his hand, Hwan's secret team goes to work. Suddenly, the giant screens around the room flicker to life, showing the entire world the crimes Mr. Wo-shin and his friends have committed. In just a few minutes, everyone watches as Mr. Wo-shin's stolen fortune disappears in real time. Hwan's hidden bank accounts flood the market, making the villain's companies worth absolutely nothing. One by one, the elite guests look at their phones in horror as their bank balances drop to zero, and police warrants for their arrest appear on the news. Chaos breaks out as the police, who are no longer being paid off by the villains, swarm the building. Mr. Wo-shin is dragged away in handcuffs, screaming and crying like a coward. He is no longer a powerful boss. He is just a common thief who has been stripped of every penny he ever stole. The people who once walked all over Eun-kyung are now being led away in shame, realizing that their time of bullying and greed has finally come to an end. While the arrests happen all around the room, Hwan ignores the cameras and the politicians who are now trying to beg for his favor. He walks down from the stage, his eyes fixed on only one person. He walks straight toward Eun-kyung, who is still standing next to the cleaning cart she was forced to push just a few hours ago. The scary fire in his eyes disappears, replaced by a soft, sad look that he has never shown to anyone else in the world. He stops right in front of her, and for a moment he doesn't look like a legendary boss or a beggar. He just looks like a man who has been lost in the rain for 5 long years. "I am so sorry, Eun-kyung," he whispers, his voice shaking with emotion. He tells her that he came back to see if the world was still good, but he realizes he almost hurt the only person who was truly pure and kind. Tears shine in his eyes as he realizes how much she has suffered while he watched from the shadows. Eun-kyung reaches out with trembling fingers, touching the dragon tattoo on his shoulder before gently cupping his face in her hands. She looks at him with so much love and tells him that she never needed a rich president or a powerful king. She only ever needed him. Hwan drops to his knees before her, not to test her, but to make a promise. He reaches out to their son, Yeon-woo, who is watching from the door with wide eyes, and pulls the little boy into a warm, tight hug with his mother. "The war is over," Hwan says, in a voice that is clear and strong. He declares that his son will not grow up in a world of violence and blood, and that he has destroyed his criminal empire for good. From this day on, their family will not be built on fear, but on a new life of peace they will build together. The guests are shocked to see a legend walk away from his crown, choosing his family over power. The dragon has finally come home, not to rule the darkness, but to lead his family into the beautiful sunlight. Exactly 1 year has passed since the night the dragon reclaimed his throne, only to set it on fire. The heavy industrial scent of bleach and the cold shadows of the basement have been replaced by the sweet aroma of blooming jasmine and the warm golden glow of the morning sun. Hwan and Eun-kyung now live in a beautiful home overlooking the sea, a place built not on the blood of the syndicate, but on the honest success of the new city project that Eun-kyung now leads with brilliance and grace. The world still whispers the name of the Dragon of Seoul, but they do so with respect for the man who chose a quiet life of peace over a kingdom of fear. In the garden, Hwan is no longer a silent beggar or a terrifying boss. He is simply a father. He kneels in the soft grass, showing Yan-woo how to plant a sapling, his strong hands moving with a gentleness that once seemed impossible. The massive dragon tattoo on his back is still there, but it is now a symbol of protection rather than war. He looks up to see Eun-kyung standing on the porch, watching them with a smile that has finally wiped away years of exhaustion. There are no more tests, no more masks, and no more secrets between them. Only the deep, unshakable truth of a love that survived the darkest storm. As the sun sets over the water, Hwan walks over to his wife and pulls her into a firm embrace, resting his forehead against hers. He had spent his whole life thinking that being a king meant having everyone fear you, but as he looks into Eun-kyung's eyes, he knows he was wrong. He is finally the richest man in the world, not because of the gold in his vaults, but because of the woman who stayed by his side when he had nothing. The dragon has found his true home, and as the stars begin to twinkle above, the family walks inside together, leaving the darkness of the past behind forever.